Real talk, resellers aren't the problem.
I keep it real.
Now, I'm sure there are two immediate and very different responses to that opening declaration. You're watching this video because one, you're a reseller who feels they've found someone to defend their legitimate business practices, or two, you're a consumer who wants to witness how absolutely wrong I am. But this video isn't necessarily a defense of scalping, but more an alternate way to view this entire situation, because it's obviously gotten to a point where it's infiltrated our industry enough that I felt the need to address it. Now, there are examples of scalping out there that I would never defend, such as people who in early 2020 hoarded essential goods like hand sanitizer and toilet paper to take advantage of the public's fear and caution over COVID-19. We should all be able to unanimously agree with this Australian supermarket owner's response when a man tried to return over 4,000 rolls of toilet paper.
And I had my first customer yesterday who said he wanted to get a refund on 150 packets of 32-pack toilet paper and 150 units of 1 litre sanitizer. I told him that is the sort of person that is causing the problem in the whole country.
Now that's how it's done. So this video deals more with reselling luxury and unnecessary material goods. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to make this video is I think many people's optics on this situation have become blurred when it comes to the subject of not being able to buy a product you really want. It's natural and convenient to focus your anger towards the closest denominator, and to a frustrated consumer, it's a scalper. But I can prove they're not the cause of this problem, and have 3 better avenues to focus your energy on. Now, let's start with retail stores and their systems. And I would like to specifically focus on the PlayStation 5. It has been over 7 months since the PS5 was released, and not only is demand still outstripping supply, but a good amount of consoles are being scooped up by scalpers, either manually checking out systems with the intent to resell them, or running bots to purchase as many consoles as they can. The common consensus is that retailers simply don't care. It doesn't matter to Walmart because they already got paid, and what a purchaser chooses to do with that product afterwards is none of their business. But I don't think this is 100% right. You see, the profit margin for consoles is historically low. And once you realize that most big online retailers offer free shipping for PlayStation 5s, they're probably losing money with every sale to a reseller. Now, retail stores and manufacturers look towards accessories and games to make up for the relatively low profit of selling a system. This is why you see many retailers such as GameStop and Costco force bundles. It's not a tactic to stop scalpers, but more to ensure that they can guarantee a profit when selling a PlayStation 5. And it's not that retailers are doing absolutely nothing to stop bots, but the real issue is that they don't do enough. While bots and bot scripts are constantly being rewritten and changed to keep up with website protection, retailers just simply aren't investing enough to keep up with the changes in bot technology. It's like Walmart protecting consumer information from getting into the hand of a hacker. It's not like a single solution was found and has miraculously worked until now. It's that Walmart pays a lot of money to experts in the field who are constantly looking for loopholes, exploits, and more importantly, are on the cusp of changes in technology to ensure they prepare and enforce their security before a hacker arrives. But the same can't be said for bots. And I think it's just a matter of finances. Bots are a problem that are targeted towards specific items, but in the grand scheme of everything retailers like Target, Best Buy, and Amazon sell, this problem is a drop in the bucket. Why invest money and resources into a problem that is not only tiny, but will resolve itself with time when compared to the millions of SKUs that you sell every day? Newegg, on the other hand, has implemented a lottery system and seems to take the task of preventing items like graphic cards from falling into the hands of a reseller seriously, but they also don't sell furniture and groceries. They have a lot more to lose. So, what's the answer to this problem? I mean, outside of retailers investing into anti bot protection and creating systems to ensure products are sold one per person, not too much. I mean, one solution could be ramifications from Sony because as more and more consumers are moving online to purchase items, Sony has more leverage as a manufacturer than they've had in the past. Right now, retailers need big brand manufacturers more than manufacturers need retailers. I mean, of course, all of this is dependent on contract agreements Sony has made with businesses, but PlayStation has the opportunity to essentially limit future orders for retailers that refuse to bolster their anti-bot protection for the sake of PlayStation consumers. The problem with this, though, is once again, PlayStation 5 stock issue will resolve themselves with time, and it might not be worth creating issues with retailers. Now, the second problem I want to talk about are the manufacturers themselves. And for this section, I want to specifically talk about Nintendo. But first, I want to talk about a solution that Sony could implement for the PlayStation 5, and I guess to take a page out of Xbox's playbook, because they have a system in place that stops bots dead in their tracks, and that is Xbox All Access. For those that don't know, Xbox All Access is a payment plan Xbox offers to retailers where consumers pay off a S or X using a monthly payment plan, either $25 or $35 respectively. This makes running a bot useless since it's not a simple checkout process. There are credit checks involved since a bank is the middleman for the payment, and you have to register the console since it is attached to an Xbox Game Pass subscription. So if PlayStation were to do something similar involving PlayStation Plus, for example, this could be a great solution for stopping bots and getting PlayStations into the hands of fans who will actually use it and not sell it. Now let's move over to Nintendo and what manufacturers can do better. We have reached a point in gaming that anything limited will immediately be scooped up by scalpers. This is a fact. And manufacturers like Nintendo are not doing a good enough job ensuring that their supply meets proper demand. By branding a product limited or collectors, you are dooming that product at launch. You're automatically signaling a product is scarce, and as soon as that happens, reseller groups with memberships that can number in thousands are instantly alerted and move in to scoop up available inventory. It's the hype beast model for a completely different industry. The singular reason why sneaker flippers bought almost every single Nike release is because Nike hasn't changed their play. Almost every sneaker they release is limited for zero reasons other than to create marketing hype and for scarcity to make a product cool and exclusive. And if you're thinking that they under manufacture to ensure there is no extra stock, I mean, I call bullshit on that. This isn't 1991. The internet, social media, and analytics can now give companies a very close picture of what type of demand to expect for any given product. And instead of creating additional shipments for a popular colorway, Nike just moves on to the next color. It's not just frustrating for consumers, but it's also a spectacular way to create more waste. It also creates secondary markets that are not only out of Nike's control, but they're also one that Nike does not profit from. They have allowed resellers for limited colorways to run rampant for so long, a third market was created to solve that problem, which are replicas that have exploded in popularity as secondary prices of legitimate sneakers have gotten out of hand. Now let's take Nintendo's Animal Crossing Sanrio amiibo cards as a perfect example. These cards were originally released in Japan and Europe in 2016, and because of their scarcity, their secondhand prices in America were through the roof, some going for over $100. Now, those cards were created for Animal Crossing New Leaf, a game that in 8 years sold about 12 million copies. It's now 2021. Nintendo decides to re-release these cards in America and are now releasing them for Animal Crossing New Horizons, a game that sold over 30 million copies in a single year. So what does Nintendo do? They print a tiny amount and make it exclusive to a single US retailer, Target, that didn't even ship them out, but forced consumers to pick them up at stores because the stock was so low. Not only that, but they announced this months before the cards went on sale. So what do you think reseller groups did? Of course, they wiped out as much inventory as they could and were immediately selling them for $100 a pop. Even now, 4 months later, the cards regularly sell for $50 per pack and almost 1,000% markup. Now, what do you think the manufacturing cost of these cards are? I mean, it can't be more than a quarter a pack. Nintendo has zero excuse for not anticipating the demand and zero excuse for not creating additional batches when they are meant to be used on a game that is on its way to becoming the best-selling Switch game of all time. Amiibo have been one of Nintendo's most popular products, but so many SKUs exist that it's very hard for consumers to get their hands on the Amiibo they want. See, the biggest issue is the fact that Amiibo have an actual function in games, some of which can't be accessed without them. And even with this rise in popularity, Nintendo chooses to limit the production of highly sought Amiibo, creating a perfect secondhand product for resellers. On May 18th, Nintendo announced the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. Now, for the next 3 days, all major retailers opened pre-orders and all sold out within an hour. And that was it. A single chance to get an Amiibo for one of Nintendo's largest franchises, and one that has a fast travel ability that doesn't seem to be part of the base game. Nintendo should be much better at understanding Amiibo demand for their biggest franchises. They also have yet to introduce a solution to this Amiibo issue. By now, they could have introduced Amiibo cards for these figures to fill this gap, and just like Nike, they sat back as a third market was created. So if you don't want to pay above retail for them, there's a thriving replica market. You see, eBay and Amazon are flooded with fan-created Amiibo cards and tokens, as they're the only solution for consumers who want to pay a fair price for Amiibo. But it's not just Amiibo. You see these? Not counting the NES Edition Joy-Con, these are Nintendo's first ever specially designed Joy-Con since the console launched in 2017. Once again, The Legend of Zelda, a massive franchise, and unless you were quick with initial retailer pre-orders, they're gone now. The fact that Nintendo did not manufacture enough of these to meet a demand we all could have seen a mile away, this is their mistake, and not one that can be attributed to resellers. Because once again, they pounce on opportunity, and if manufacturers were better at meeting initial demand, there is no secondary market. You see, if a product's pre-order launch sells within the hour, you've essentially doomed your consumers at that point, because all subsequent pre-orders and initial launch stock will be botted and scooped up once they go up. It then becomes near impossible to purchase at retail price. Let's compare those Joy-Con to this product, the Legend of Zelda Game & Watch, an item where Nintendo did meet demand and is still available to pre-order right now, essentially killing the secondary market. Another thing manufacturers can do is communicate with consumers about future availability, which many fail to do. Sony and Microsoft could be doing a much better job at regularly sharing updates about what they are actively doing to get consoles into the hands of fans. And that leads to the third and biggest problem with reselling. And it's actually the main reason why these markets exist, and that is buyers. Because you can't have a market without them. Doesn't matter what you're selling, if no one is there to purchase it, you'll be forced to close up shop. And the fact is that the secondary market is driven by demand that ebbs and flows just like that of the initial market. See, there are two ways to affect a secondary market's demand. The first is for the initial manufacturer to meet demand, and the second way is simple, really, and that is for buyers to not give in to the secondary market. Doing so would essentially crash it, forcing resellers to break even or take losses and move on to another product. Early secondhand buyers also affect how many resellers go after products. You see, once a limited item is announced and pre-orders open, resellers immediately move to pre-order multiples. They then try to sell those pre-orders to test the secondary market. If the item sells for a good profit, it drives even more resellers to track that item and scoop up future inventory. Now, I have seen many short sighted solutions out there. One example being that reselling an item for a penny above retail should be illegal, but that's not really a good solution. I'm sure a lot of collectors out there buy items like Funko Pop because they enjoy them, but their scarcity also gives them an appreciating asset in case of a financial emergency. Preventing people from being able to profit off an item they legally own is a step too far. Now, the most common statement I see when it comes to reselling is that all resellers are pieces of shit who only care about themselves. And that type of anger comes from a pure place of frustration, but it's also one that masks the real problem, and you are directing your frustration at the wrong party. Because let's be honest, we don't live in the most considerate country in the world. Millions of people couldn't even be bothered to wear a mask for 15 minutes to save lives. And in today's job market, arbitrage is a very lucrative profession. If you look hard enough, you'll find millions of people finding opportunities in various markets to make a living. I'm not going to get angry at the woman buying a bottle of water for a quarter and selling it for $1 on the scorching hot train platform this summer. The MTA doesn't provide clean drinking water in those stations. They also don't provide proper ventilation or a solution to the overwhelming heat. That woman is making a living off of the failures of the city. Same as people in retail arbitrage are making a living off of the failures of retailers, manufacturers, and impatient buyers. I'm not angry that Amazon and billionaires like Elon Musk don't pay taxes. I'm angry at the system that is aware of these loopholes but does nothing to fix it. The nationwide average wage in this country is $25.68. That means pre-tax, you make about $200 a day. You can net a day's pay in this country when reselling a single PlayStation 5 outside of many other items resellers purchase and sell at a higher price. You're not going to be able to guilt or insult that person to the point where they will quit and go back to a 9 to 5. See, it's not up to resellers to stop and leave money on the table. It's up to retailers to invest in bot protection. If once a week you find out that hackers were able to steal your sensitive information from Amazon, are you blaming the hackers or are you blaming Amazon for not protecting your information? It's also up to manufacturers to ensure they meet proper demand and communicate with their customers and retail partners. In February, Pokemon ran a card promotion with McDonald's where Happy Meals were immediately wiped out with entire boxes finding their way onto eBay. Many overwhelmingly blamed resellers, but once again, you're pointing your finger in the wrong direction. Pokemon should have properly prepared McDonald's, knowing full well the card fever at that point in time. McDonald's allowed people to buy dozens of Happy Meals at a time, and managers obviously arranged backdoor deals to get rid of entire boxes. That's a failure for McDonald's systems, not resellers. And last but not least, stop blaming resellers and start blaming buyers. Every gaming console ever has a resale period where stock can be resold for a profit. It usually lasts a few months, but this type of demand, along with supply issues, are unprecedented, which is why it has lasted this long, and the entire secondary market for the PlayStation 5 would collapse if buyers were just patient. This article was making the rounds last week from the Wall Street Journal, and was actually part of the reason why I wanted to make this video, because it revolved around a 16-year-old who netted $110,000 using arbitrage last year. Look at these tweets, most from adults directed at a 16-year-old. This kid is an asshole, absolutely disgusting. He should be put in jail. This is criminal, inhuman shit. He's a little CNT, and frankly, whoever wrote and approved this article is too. I'm sure you guys can figure out the missing letter from that word. Now, I want you to truly understand how weird this is. To get so angry as an adult that you call a 16-year-old an asshole. The average cost of insulin in this country is $450. That's something to be angry about. We're still recovering from a pandemic that gave Americans a real-life case study for why we need universal health care. And over 600,000 deaths later, we're still the only country in the developed world without one, where 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns are for medical bills. That's something to get angry about. The federal minimum wage is $7.25, which for businesses basically means I would pay you less, but I'm legally not allowed to. A kid buying a $500 luxury good to sell for over $800 to some impatient American who can't stand to wait is not something to get this angry over. This fever in this country for material goods has gotten to the point where people can't tell the difference between a want and a need. We're not talking about essential goods over here. You don't need a PlayStation 5. Matter of fact, you don't need most of the shit that resellers are profiting off of. You don't need another pair of $200 sneakers. Markets are proven by buyers, not sellers. Last year, Nintendo released this triple pack of Mario games for $60 that they barely even retouched. All these other suckers in the industry like Activision are paying millions in development costs to remake games and then selling them for $40 a pop. Nintendo, on the other hand, sold 5 million copies in 2 weeks and 9 million in total. Buyers proved a new market for Nintendo. They don't need to spend money remastering old games. They could just re-release them pretty much as is. And on July 16th, here comes the first game after that successful test. Look, when something happens that frustrates us, usually the first emotion to come out is anger. I implore you to take some time to think and ensure your energy goes towards the real root of the problem, because you shouldn't hate the player when you really should be hating the game. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and please share if you enjoyed it. You can also listen to the Camp Koji podcast every Monday on your platform of choice. Thank you.